We can have this recording if Emory's cool with it. Like we will. I can send it to the full chain back if you want at the end. So
they would love that.
Yeah, absolutely. If you all are cool with that.
Yes.
Right.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Sorry.
Just let me know when everyone's good.
I will. I'm sorry, sweetheart. Give me a second.
I forgot. I can make a read mount really quick. If I can do it with one button click.
No,
You don't want to read mount.
do not want it.
Okay. Even though I format all my cards really intentionally, and so nothing gets fucked up.
Sure.
Okay.
My read was terrible round one. I was missing like half the there.
Oh no.
I basically cut every card I read, and so. I mean, I guess that's a big. It's probably nice that you're all in like a big squad, so other people can cut cards. But that is the risk.
It was missing the ones I cut. Like I don't
Oh
know.
no, that's fucked up.
I am 100% all yours.
Okay, cool. You're good. The advantage was a solo service, Thomas, the most settled class, your race, setting a bill, chapter, setting the year, exactly the Rounding had 21, the 25, Trump solidization, the public sector, speculating, the least minutes, schedule up, which will allow Trump to remove abstractions, Trump is exclusive, landing with Tina, giving the article she gives off, said Paris, proud of me, apply to waste that proud artist, the West States, as Latin Council, CBS, the Trump is trying to cure it, believe the services get straight out powers, get off, begin by picking UT rather than statute, firing John, UT have more courts will allow UT remains UC, and so the majority says, as a woman say, we enjoy such ideas, and affirmative justification for those workers is necessary to effectually change to the government, Mason, 25, which should governments do to apply for state conversations, promising, authorities used to asking questions when we see the government in the hands of Blake has it, and the conversation the master policy, the world God, why does this legitimate products to hostile letters are worth arguing for today, so you're not going to talk to the argument, the reason is to argue against ideas like that we talk to their longer organization, the whole position, so that merits will be successful in surroundings of treacherous against the war to keep yourself oriented towards the goal this avenue is beginning to talk about professional labor concerns, if letting be criticism is not enough, there's the need for defense of civil service to house the tax and professional separate of the Trump project's defense of the storms of rights and conscience being resistant professionalism, lies government, due policies and wants we need civil service protections, let's uncheck Trump process, extinction by folding far right movements globally, undermining cooperation, starting wars over an extent, 24, trouble cost usage across the bill, user question and protections rules, check for police officers of loyal Trump, order agencies to weaken the government's functions, loyal support, policies of the government president, those issues awful orders, the military would carry out protesters of the states, provoking counter-protests, Trump by crackdown malicious attacks, protesters, Trump can opponent fire movements, Trump legitimize most diverse proposals, success creating inflation, economic process, the leads which exacerbates stress for why Trump is proposed supporting typically immigrant subordination and walls, security measures, Trump will dispute until climate regulation and green energy, and the U.S. adjusting climate action, countries that scale to climate action, they may imitate regulation to remain competitive. Trump is right by saying for increasing risk and another pandemic on current health measures and exacerbate economic isolation, leading to a more conflictual world, implements against Ukraine, abuse, and encourage freedom, extend his aggression, Trump's ability to know who will return the hard labor, which he acted, Trump would be gracious to escalate the crisis, suppling into nuclear war, it causes conflict, escalation, great powers, and nuclear states, Iran, 22, Afghanistan, Iraq, lists of 70 countries, exit wars, making unknown Congress and understanding better than public security fails to comply with the report, natural lawmakers taking back with the first undemocratic leaders, contributes to constitutions, invites escalation of civil war, they conceive operation whatever cost they always allies U.S. irregular warfare against Turkey and Iran, no co-obstruction China far beyond new terror engaged in commerce with powerful nuclear states. Trump is bad recruiting executive authorities as a systemic problem. Jenkins said 24 that a leader might grow with a Trump legend. Leaders have more certain became claims of the authority security. The security threats and nobody's zero launches the president for any precedent to real president constrained by rule lack of labor security. That's for exact policies constraints over president to president to slash his control. All branches exercise authority, non-security, and independently, abdicating the nonpartisan civil service leaves its total to the biggest portfolio of catastrophic risk ever shown in 22 service, to work in the business service, managed catastrophic risk, service activity, Rob management rate, so fear, job standards to be implicated by policies, reproduction becomes important for distributor service, offer advice to top here, presenting rules, actually effect relationship, without qualification, present will influence or close to find executive brings expertise to find success and better response for everything food, and more that a way solving proximate problems is good, even if fixes are imperfect. Further on, 24 to basic just problem solving point, and avoidance for construction, overestimate, injustice is impossible to restructure everything, problem solving and service, and transformation becomes critical, even if incremental problem solving, and some of these parameters require complex structures, problem solving, and the takes place of politics to transform matter by analysis, stepping through small steps, operations enables, and the scaling up personal policy. View the state as a social consolidation. Balance is an animal of federal workers and absolute movements through the state. Here's the largest 24 scholars. Emphasize institutional complicity and justice. Much more commission for the state is small with consumptions of social relation provides foundations for investigating movements to pursue that the state of compromises first and struggle the state is consolidation relation level. The process is expression power always contested critics. The products of college although the state is free to face policies that reproduce capitalist relations, movements, forces, compromise, and become the basis to new blocks movements work through the state and real strategies require each other contextual factors, media justice to the state movements and untrained by actors meant to compel units to challenge reform studies of efforts to pursue justice processes and efficacies and transfer institutional agencies, including influence over at least the institution of regulatory capturing positions within the agency working with the state forces, compromise, and rest power for capital documents, pursue goals from inside agencies, highlight to accommodation, a collaborative model of the state by taking position with the agency's allies, builds solidarity, counter-terrorism, isolates the Wall Street groups, organizations, engaged in anti-racist practices, allies are first intelligence foundation of the regional states over the bridge between inside asset is where seven agencies spread administration could improve enforcement of regulations, counter-accidents, society capital discrimination, the agencies and obey environmental civil rights, laws, legal enforcement results, the allegation, unless rectified laws of the state, or protection of the capitalist class, direct confrontation fails because of social relations that constitute traumas and work for persist, reform of liberal rights is going to touch overreach, going to touch five, the civil, the society saw several of the government, they can together constitute the state, definition of the state, and the check that means political society, not equal limit, exercise of unity, events, industry, initiatives of civil servants, and constitution, occupies the ideological current of the right one, is reinforced that the executive and would have reason to advocate rule by executive via direction, confrontation, would not, and pardon group as long as legitimacy is rooted in civil rights in the civil society when they should concentrate on word power, the position within civil society, so which capillary operations of hegemony before devising strategies and blending the principles of rights are not functional to reproduction of capitalist hegemony, the constitute the condition that makes possible self-organization of the working class model performs expand structure in direction that reduces chance of being functionalized of political power, conservatives and separate advocacy of civil society to organize institutions to pass in policy. Thus, we think that the United States government should substantially strengthen collective bargaining rights for civil servants by executive orders 143.43 and 142.51, excluding agencies and subdivisions to the Department of Homeland Security and Department of Defense. The abstract Trump's EOs and enumerates a narrow understanding of Article 2 that limits executive authority. Press 25 federal FMA violates biological which requires the President to take care of scholars that UT can bring clauses towards the vast authority of the President with power. Scholars can take a limited view of the Constitution not has absolute power. The frameworks do not include the words all the Constitution is silent. And the granting this reply taking care should not be the President possesses power to fire any separate any reason execution be limitation on executive discretion. Execution is offending was understood to convey good faith structural up in the field to carry out faithful execution of usurping rights. The assaults 1 through the courts federal bargaining rights squarely contradict the UET, restoring them imposes an external break on executive authority. McDonald 25. The UET would undermine bargaining society to balance power. All powers vested any rebellions is subject to evidence. And the showing something to challenge settled by just UET since Article 2 that they would have implications for personnel independent would have insulated the court has made productions back logical ways to the high workforce and joins up buffer against control CBA's bargaining races. Since unsettled both sides, the UET bargaining permits the president unilaterally implementing this for strategies. Each contract limits president's discretion. Each is an external break on control. Congress restrains foreign policy. Anderson 23. Congress has the power to terminate forces legitimate legislative restrictions are protected by the executive. And Congress adopted such a decision-making function and work powers help to restrain the executive branch and empower Congress corrected to reaches executive power. The law is a tool, not a strategy. It provides a language to articulate normative demands, can mobilize bottom-up movements, especially in the context of labor Meekin 22. The movements of every state mobilized law to confront injustice. Law provides a language in which demands to be articulated as cause for action when under the special law systems and legals that reproduce existing structures and point underlines the rule of justice in confronting injustice. We prove should draw conclusions, scholars and the laws into which justice mobilization organizes and the criticism of cautions against restriction, reactionary dismissal, reason uses laws to the bottom of strategic actions related to the movement's mobilization by percent courts matter even despite authoritarianism. Bring 25. It may seem like now to the law since authority has to be acceptable. This is oversimplified ruling entirely through creation and exhausting. Reliance on the law is essential for become in the areas of contention. The law is complex and court regimes optimistic hands. The point judiciary is defense against erosion. 160 countries over years. French judiciaries prevent authoritarianism. Studying 74 countries said the citizens' Spanish and comments do not comply. Second, through the civil service unions are the quote most important line of defense against presidential sabotage. Handler 25. Trump is all the federal workers is consequential for the executive laws. Class units, too much structural litigation, pushing registrations are devised servants of the resource invaders who live here as mission students for the reason for the line defense against sabotage with serial students and the post servant and the resources and authorities units and policy and lobbying for public administration to inclusive seeking policy reform rights and balance of asset work reduce service charge, and goals of various people's deal ownership, federal labor, setting CBAs excluded, federal servants for bargaining units, protect against firearms and influence agency mission, Cambridge 24 units, separate relation and downside to your positions, university productions during workforce productions units, lobbying actually only prohibition due from voice, lobbying arrange for other issues units, lobbying enforcing agency leadership, and has substantial influence, only units can solve worker morale, to 25 workers are waiting workers and the fear the units value how to say they can, because they watch the government is losing knowledge, it tests everything someone is wasteful or not, and it transforms their members, orienting them towards social goods instead of personal gain. Bruno Grant 16 in voice, breathing units of motivation, taking away the rights to maybe removing the supported incentives to recruit workers without cultivating receiving way, and there's always a way to learn or weakening institutions workers, perceive careers in the public sector and spend lower wages, fiat is critical of the state dealers, and it's necessary to envision radical alternatives here in College 24 via act, as if something desirable is happening to imagine failures and define policy granted, in hopelessness conditions will be tools to produce provocative knowledge for efforts, and the required engagement with benefits and trade as alternatives to reduce policies in response to accident policies, to limit self-social stimulate policy making utopian components, encourage experimentation theories, not only exploiting and shift their policy area focus it, no further this question, who is the subject, expert, or research, might play with a new local commitment to reform and tackle justice, and in its conclusions, ruminate on whether policy is possible theorists have identified the state's bad scholarship, resist the state of model, faith, but mass positive symbolism, and undermines the state of ontological implications, and critique alongside construction of engagement is necessary, sees whole potential for transaction, refusal play for go too much, preferred promise, and will establish helpful policy and action will aid movements, and project requires alleviation, softening, calculation, and space to reduce radical praxis. I have 29 seconds. You want me to read anything? Okay, I think I'm good.
The 1AC Meekin evidence says the law is a tool, not a strategy. The law is your tool. What is your strategy?
I mean, the strategy of the plan is to give civil servants rights.
How?
That's a good strategy. Well, because it confers rights via the federal government and restores collective bargaining rights. That's a good strategy because unless we imagine that those federal bargaining rights are restored, it will never happen, which is the Mason evidence. So, rhetorically advocating that is a good strategy.
What's the internal link between rhetorically advocating for this and actualizing your strategy?
The Mason evidence is really good. It says that you might think that because the U.S. the government is controlled by Trump and he stripped federal bargaining rights, it means that we shouldn't think about alternatives in restoring those rights. That's not true because if we never talk about the ideas like the plan, it will never materialize. So, advocating the plan and saying it's a good idea is necessary to
But you have not proven that it will materialize even if we talk about it.
Well,
How is it going to materialize if we talk about it?
Obviously, fiat's not real, like we agree with that,
Okay.
but we think endorsing the AF is a good rhetorical strategy.
So the AF is a rhetorical strategy. Okay,
Sure.
that's fine. Right?
Some
The-
respects, I guess.
Okay. 1AC Mason, professionalism is worth defending. Why defend professionalism as part of your rhetorical strategy?
Professionalism in the context of the AF is like we should have a nonpartisan civil service. Trump has collapsed those norms because he's instilled his cronies in government who don't have any expertise. Professionalism is necessary to have expertise in maintaining a nonpartisan, theme.
This defines professionalism as, quote, the disinterested desire to do one's job well. Why does it?
The
Why?
disinterested desire. I don't agree with that. But the
Oh wait,
the part
I'm sorry.
that we
I'm
actually
quoting your
highlighted.
piece of evidence.
Yeah, but
Okay.
not the part we've highlighted. The thing that we actually did highlight, though, the Sioux evidence at the bottom of the solvency page says that unions are necessary to worker morale. That makes them interested in their job, and it means that they come because of their passion, not just earning. So stripping them of rights means that they, see the job as a means to an end instead of a thing that's good for you.
Okay, so that's fine. Trump, you say he will cause extinction by emboldening far-right movements. What movements?
It doesn't list specific ones, but I guess it sort of does. Like it says it emboldens Netanyahu abroad, it emboldens Russia's incursions in the Baltics. Domestically, it emboldens, far-right extremists
Trump's rhetoric
who hate
emboldens.
immigrants. We've seen that.
Yes, I totally agree. Trump's rhetoric emboldens Netanyahu. I'm confused.
Well, Trump's posturing emboldens Netanyahu because the U.S. is withdrawing globally and it signals to other countries that we're not willing to defend
Okay,
allies.
so Congress, who you said solves all the things, continually passes like massive aid packages to Israel.
So we
Why
didn't
is
say
that not
Congress,
emboldening? And you said Congress
no,
solves.
we
the
didn't say
unchecked
Congress
USD.
solves everything. We said it was one of 3 ways the plan would restrain foreign policy.
So Congress is
we
gone.
obviously
Congress
agree
is out. They're not restraining Netanyahu. What are the other two?
they're not restraining Netanyahu, but they do prevent
But that's the after
U.S.
effect.
interventions in countries. Like in some instances, we've read 2 other
You think
causal ways to
Congress
solve that.
prevents U.S.
Yeah, that's the
that's
way
so
they
funny.
stand on
Okay, that's
You
okay.
have the thing.
Oh yeah.
You can use this one.
Oh, that would be the. They all lost their stand. That's what happened. I
know
where
where
it
it
is. You start reading the one and say you're fine.
Yep.
I'm just getting it with it. It's around the corner.
One and two cent. Order this one in case.
You said 1?
Yeah.
Boo.
All right, we'll do 5. You got me.
You don't have 5. Let's be real.
Everybody, y'all got it?
I just got it. I need to.
Gray, you can honestly keep speaking because there's mac and cheese out there still, and I kind of want a snack. So
Yeah,
you
go
give the line.
get your mac and cheese.
I'm good enough for it.
Drake. Ryan. Demands for collective bargaining reform are structured around an infrastructural violence. The unquestioned value of productivity and the disavowal of dependency is an ableist commitment which guarantees the capacitation of the heroic citizen worker who can pull themselves up by the bootstraps and the debilitation of those who cannot. Kim 25. Infrastructural violence employs organized abandonment, administrative violence, and abilities to mobilize the welfare state. These emerge from the welfare administration, manufacture, neglect, motorization, and profit-driven system. Infrastructural violence also describes the attendant enablement for resource populations which fortify white supremacy, heteropatriarchal, nuclear family, and class stratification. These link racialized disablement to the simultaneous creation of white enablement through the exploitative workfare programs and wear away at disabled survival while disabling low-income and racialized people in mass. Capitalist demands to deplete reserves of those who can afford and outsource care labor to, creating a dualized organization of social reproduction that's fortified racial and class hierarchies across domestic and global scales, unevenly distributed, ostensibly anti-establishment projects and spirals. The normative investment of the nation's dating capital fundamentally shaped by ableist ideas around dependency, which define work in ways that reproduce the evaluation of disability, ideological and narrative elements of structural violence, akin to the figures of welfare queen, non-citizen migrant, and disabled non-worker. The ideological argument for structural violence index the state author narratives of discursive strategy, privatized care, single issue nationalist movements depend on labor extracted from multiplied, marginalized members so much that depends on the disparate care network of women and including the functioning political movements and academic institutions. In the strange affinities, particular populations are rendered vulnerable to death and devaluation. The dominant discourse of dependency as a rhetorical instrument justifying racial lies, death, and dissemination following the abolition of legal and racial discrimination, the exploitative version of interdependence and the dependency myth of undocumented migrant workers provides a key touchstone. Disability can be present even in the absence of straightforward representation within histories of labor, less as a category of identity, more as a framework for infrastructural violence. It lends for making a post-welfare U.S. and able-bodied assumption that organizing the world disabled someone, enabling others, assessing surveillance, punishment, and control, organizing investment and abandonment, impossible to understand U.S. infrastructure without understanding disability, normative ideologies around dependency, labor, and production under resource austerity, a representational strategy, category of labor, and a built environmental network. The app seeks to mitigate dependence by offering a more favorable exchange rates for labor time. This framing of dependence as a fulcrum in capitalist violence cascades disability as its paradigmatic example and disavows the universal interdependence at the heart of all life. Navistanos 19. We are told capital depends on the labor of the boss is parasitic on labor. The tendency is not wrong. We're all dependent. The construction of the care of the labor as find its recognition in exchange of lesson, reciprocal give and takes, and give, or take and takes among the under exchange. You're surrounded by its excess until the work beyond the notion of production value by labor will have failed to recognize dependency as cited accumulation that marked as disposable. Disability seems akin to death, fate, even deemed a fate worse than death. Disability runs through all work. Disability can't be intrinsic violence in capitalism in the sense that we need to make rights-based claims in ways that are legible. Social democracy, rights policy reform, and the grammar of a common good that locates disability as a drain on resources of the nation as a whole and justifies eugenics. Got to be 25. Policies which enable labor participation must be understood as fundamentally capitalist social reproduction relegated here to individual responsibility. Relying on the private household policies that reinforce the family form, encourage nuclear family formation, shares the union positions, workers have the right to the nuclear family, which reinforce bourgeois social values. There's thus nothing radical about a progressive welfare state, always internally contradictory and reactionary. Apparent migrants and women were subjected to persistent relegation to low-wage work. Social democratic feminist models for collective social reproduction espouse eugenic theories that sought to ensure racialized or disabled people do not have children. The interconnection of social democracy and eugenics is not as contradictory as it sounds if we take seriously the eugenic belief in a better form of reproduction. Social democracy's emphasis on the health of the people. The universal subject of extinction is defined along ableist parameters, imagining the recuperation of the world as is, raised over all other ways of being. Data in Cobra 25. Concealed is the idea of human values. We've always been the ones that define life, the ones racing towards extinction, and life is now facing the death of its own value. Following the extinction experiment, only the death is the own ethical and political subject and us with alternate modes of survival. After the evaporation of the subject is hot, we might be in a position to think of other kinds of living systems and whether the future or not should be saved for another mode of life altogether, a mode of reading the world and imagining this world after where reading is not what we have written or described rather than destroy. We close positively to the inhuman and the other reading process before now talking about the end of the world. However, it is really the end of our world, a particular mode of world. Markets rely on eugenics for their continuation. Under the guise of rehabilitation, those who cannot meet the productivity and professionalization standards of the average worker are subjected to mass incarceration in prisons or asylums and forced sterilization. Rosenthal 21. Eugenics carried out against disabled people of color and women demonstrates the insidious way elimination policy remains persistent. Disabled people represent troublesome source of counter profitability, as the Fed defines it to be disabled as to be unable to engage in a paying job, systematically devalued. Disabled people represent an economic problem, necessity, and political solution. The prevailing solution was mass institutionalization, sterilization, and social elimination, confined to executed render incarceration and silence in prisons behind the pretense of being rehabilitative, structures in favor of social removal and warehousing with the growth of standardized and competitive, the time-regulated norms of labor bodies and minds that are less properly conformed. Reliability, as an ideological conclusion, it sends a message all those who do conform as the institutional ways those who fail. Welfare must remain below the lowest wage, the deserving separated from the undeserving, those able to labor colors into it. In the impedimentary from the standpoint of capitalist political economy, disabled people became the targets of incarceration and sterilization. The particular history of white supremacy, settler colonial expansion, and racialized slavery is disproportionately compromised black people, migrants, indigenous people. Vote negative refuse to build a vision of labor politics on violent infrastructure productivism that disavows dependency. That was down to 19. It's hard work to be disabled, even when you're barred from work or behind bars or working, resisting work, working resistance, disability, and labor aren't separate. Why are we being told they are? What is separating the mesh into neat categories? And the theme of work is a disavowed common dependency. I mentioned the lesson reciprocal give and take, rather than give and give, or take and take. The money you enter a process of exchange is surrounded by excess and seeking with disability. We see work beyond the production of value by labor, disfiguring consensus-based reality. What gives us waste is what's been given away is the impossible life of dreams, living all this space-time, the extra disability runs through all work because it's about dependency. Presuming that fine disability can't be unturned violence capital. We need to draw a circle around who counts to make race-based claims legible. Disability has a privileged relationship to form this capacity to deform categories, so we ask how can we live? Think about gambling probabilities, threshold, and doors. The blind is a forced bet the player can't decline to play no matter what. The double blind, an apparent false choice to superimpose an end is a double blind or an aura of the blind. The double blind describes stakes of dependency, something you are bound to do and that you still play at anyway, deforming, dissolving boundaries, and still being bound. Case. Strike down and future executive theory is not a mandate of the plan. Normal means it's definitely not work. Even if it's SCOTUS will right away any and every other decision before they strike it down. That's 25. Over the past 15 years, the court moved in unambiguously unitarian pro-presidential direction. These decisions, co-suggest anti-unitarian decisions, are increasingly thin ice. Thomas articulates the desire to repudiate the erroneous precedent. Other justices share that desire. Remarks by conservative justices indicates the court will soon reassess anti-unitarian precedents. Kavanaugh wrote whether the court will narrow or overrule precedents. There is at least a reasonable prospect we will do so. Justice Kagan, the majority, was raring to embrace unitarian executives. Unions love Trump. They'll abandon liberalism at the drop of a hat. Post-plan. Votes 18. Trump's media with labor was a coup. Union later praised Trump for what they call his commonsensical for starting from NAFTA, though Teamsters have praised Trump to remain active in the Democratic Party. The contradictory stance on these issues are shared by many as unions. But if they can, union politics are deeply embedded in a culture of nationalism. The plan magnified that. Women's 20. The connection between organized labor and nationalism has long been obvious by American campaigns. The immunizing overseas workers, UAW, Smash Toyotas, and Bakery Union created a racially tinged cartoon about Mexico. This example demonstrates the continuation of nationalism over solidarity. And another example is union brand and clothing, expediting patriotism that reinforce white code values, but also speak to new unionist tacit engagement with white nationalism. The one AC names the unchecked unitarian executive theory as the agent and cause of evil. This is a misapprehension symptomatic of liberal democracy's chokehold on our political imagination. Every time they appeal to the unique violence of an unchecked executive, remember that Congress sent billions in aid to Israel with Biden's go-ahead for the sole purpose of genocide. That Obama's status of deporter-in-chief was made possible by collaborating with the DOD and DHS. That Clinton's war on crime was a war on black people waged by government agencies. Exceptionalizing Trump's position as the unitarian executive naturalizes those same violences while guaranteeing their continuation beyond 20. It is crucial to turn the misapprehension fashion the political product that began the moment Europeans made contact with West African shores, invaded indigenous territory, and marked the creation of America. The violence attributed to Trump are simply the consequence of the capital white supremacy. Exception of Trump is dangerous, a grotesque, and ahistorical deliberation. Trump is not the exception to the rule of what white supremacist patriarchal capital is going to do to maintain its rule. If we exceptionalize Trump, another more effective Trump will inevitably rise. Racial terror, violence, and genocide have always been the point. How can we take seriously the performative outrage when crimes have been enacted on a global scale by Churchill, Roosevelt, Truman, Kennedy, and Obama? What is Hitler to the Palestinians? They racialized, imperialized, or colonized peoples. Rhetorical devices such as pigs like kill us into voting for Democrats to stabilize and upkeep of fascist rule, while left radicals are condescended to for expecting purity for winning a world without racialized violence. Liberal Democrats are the left wing and fascism are still cops. If Trump is Hitler, what is Obama and his people of Libya, Syria, Pakistan? What are Indians and the migrants who have been deported? Black people executed by police. These things occurred long before Trump and continue to escalate long after. Anything else you want?
Yes, I sent you another card.
Oh. Cool.
This is a link on the critique.
Just on the hair.
Yeah. The one AC's rhetorical project relies on narrative prosthesis that's constitutively ableist, Mitchell and Snyder 2000. Narrative prosthesis situates repositional if disavoted on the unsteady rhetorical stance. The body deemed like in these conversation. The prosthesized in the body, the rhetorical figure carries assumptions about what is evident. Prosthesized is an institute, a notion of tolerant deviance. The prosthesized body is the rule, not the exception. All bodies are deficient. Materiality proves indescribable. The body is a linguistic relation that cannot be average. A normal body measure divorced from the observation of bodies which are variables. This fails to consider the contingencies of bodies within the social and historical context. It is thoroughly artificial.
I just sent that. I think it's.
Okay. Are you good, John?
Yep.
Okay. You're good.
Well, actually, did they send a card?
I did.
I'll give you that actually.
Okay, I don't like to read them.
You don't?
Words are too close.
Oh, I just.
Okay, cool. We're good.
I'm good.
The alternative, I understand that it refuses the app. What does it do to supplant productivity logics?
Refusal is a prior question of the generation of alternatives. Our argument is that refusing the productivity logics of the ONAC opens up the question of the scenes of work and how we can embrace interdependency instead of rejecting effort.
Okay, so what does the alt do to embrace interdependency?
Well, so you're asking questions that presume I feel the scale of the world. We've said that that's debate, that is not what this debate is about. This
I
debate is
understand
a
that you
question
think your
of the
role-
rhetoric in this
Yeah.
debate, which was your concession in 1AC cross-check.
I totally disagree. I understand that you think your role is to just say that the rhetoric we said was bad. I think that you read non-unique links about productivity logics broadly, and I want to know how the app supplants.
So you're asking about the link debate now, Spencer?
No, I'm asking how the alt solves the link.
Yeah, we have made critiques of the rhetorical product of the ONAC. The alternative.
But you've also
refuses
made
the
rhetorical
productive
critiques
logics
about
of
the
ONAC.
rhetorical critiques about socially democratic states broadly, enforcing
Nope,
the
those
nuclear
are-
family.
Like, I put those on the, oh, you're talking about the card about social democracy?
Yep.
That's a preempt to the 2AC link term that says we're actually super woke and different.
Okay, but what I'm asking is all of those things are about the status quo. So what
No,
does the alt
they're
do
about
to
the 1AC.
transition? Okay.
Um,
I don't think
It
this
begs
is
the
gonna get
question of
anywhere.
the links. Okay.
So you think it just opens up questions of themes of interdependency?
It
we
says,
argued
it
that.
says that the judge should not endorse the 1AC insofar as it relies
It's
on rhetoric and
refusal.
justifications that are consistently
The
ignored.
markets link, what does the 1AC do to rely on markets?
That's
Rosenthal
an impact
evidence,
card.
that's an impact.
It's an impact?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, sure. The nuclear, actually, I wanna talk about the first card. The 1AC, didn't make a claim about whether people should or should not work. We just said that the people that should work should have rights. Why does that inscribe productivity logics?
The Kim evidence is a theory of power for how interdependency is denied in an ableist world and diagnoses infrastructural violence as a process where this happens. So,
Okay, I'm more concerned with the
Not
second
only
part of that question.
what's the second part of the question?
The app didn't say people should work, it just said that the people that are in government should have collective bargaining rights. Why does that reinscribe
The
productivity?
justifications for why and how people should work in your solvency evidence say things like federal workers are unique, exemplary, and revolutionary because, quote, work serves as a vehicle to fulfill
Yeah, but
a
those
personal need to experience a meaningful life.
those
This is
collective, those workers want to work. You've made arguments about prescribing productivity as
No.
a moral good.
no.
You see what-
I'm sorry.
Is your
I'm sorry.
argument in a world of the alternative? It is people cannot find value in their work.
The question just assumed that the link is, but don't some people want to work?
No, I have.
Wrong.
So I have a
link
second
is-
question,
okay.
which is that do you take issue with people finding value in their work? Is that
Okay,
intrinsically
So this is
problematic?
answered by the first question that Spencer was getting to.
Which
That
is,
was you have misapprehended what the link is. It's
No,
not that.
that
What
doesn't
about
answer
some
my
people
question.
want to work?
it's
I'm getting
the
there.
way
Okay,
you
you have
have
10 seconds.
rhetorically defended this is work serves as a vehicle to fulfill and make meaningful our lives.
There's
This is the
okay,
implicitly
sure.
eugenic calculus that Marxist stable life as not meaningful and not worth living because disability is a site of anti-productivity.
Thank you.
Oh, shit, my bad. I don't need this, right? Y'all got it. Y'all got the time.
Yeah.
I got novice and JV kids.
No, you're totally fine.
The worst thing I ever did was listen to a 17-minute 2AC.
That's so funny.
That'd be good for me here.
Well, I think you'll be all right.
Oh, maybe.
Well, you might have a lot of new things to say. But
Some old, some new.
some old,
That's-
some new. I
that's
like it.
Good part of construction. Good part of
So
construction.
true. Okay.
All right, so it's the thing. It's our thing, and then that thing.
Cool.
You know, 5 seconds.
That's a joke. Okay.
It is. It's pretty.
I'm good.
Is anyone already?
Unchecked Trump outweighs replacing non-partisan civil service and unleashing extinction from aggressive foreign policy. Unchecked environmental crisis, weakened cooperation, and capture governance. That's Wednesday Davis. Wednesday can see every impact to the extent they win. Link arguments they have to prove that our Trump can solve the proximate effect of structural accumulation, which outweighs harm reduction in service of our goals is good and possible. It's impossible to fully, it's impossible to effectuate the alternative instantly, so the alternative makes wider transformative change impossible. That's why I see brain throttle, prioritize extinction, it's only reversible impacts and cause massive suffering in the interim, because not everyone dies at the same time, and to use consequentialism first is regression alternatives, and then clouds back into a casino of alternative way to compare ethical frames. Second is trade-off, something else can evaluate relative harm, so defaults are affirmative even if our ethical theory is flawed. 1C1 strike down first is normal means. 1C concede 1C Perez evidence, which says that the legal basis of Trump firing federal workers is the UET, which means that if we reinstate to federal workers, then the UET must be legally struck down by the courts, which is the Perez evidence. Second is it's irrelevant to wider solvency. The plan built institutional capacity to attract Trump through Congress and lobbying. If they say durable fiat is bad and proves for their framework arguments, it's wrong because all our arguments about futurity and imagining the plan are good and necessary because we can understand what a good model of governance looks like. Or we agree that Clarence Thomas is bad and doesn't like the plan. That's our uniqueness argument, and it proves why we should effectuate good forms of governance. Now, the right-wing bias card is first factually incorrect. It's about the private sector. Only we have read evidence that says that servants oppose Trump's agenda. That's Hammer, Pretz, and Harrison. Second, it's silly because the public sector unions help Trump. Why would he access them? Why would he access them? Now, the Loomis evidence, the unions build resistance to Trump. Public sector unions oppose Trump and are necessary to divest movements from the state for political justice by imposing regulations on capital. That's the Harrison and Hammer evidence. Loomis is about the private sector who support Trump, which is unique arguments for us because it proves he supported. Now, the Briand evidence, we are turning this exceptionalization argument explicitly. The YC says, quote, creating executive authority is a problem beyond Trump. The card says, quote, their card says, quote, another Trump will rise. Our entire point is that federal workers can control state power in any manifestation because we agree Democrats also do bad shit in foreign policy. B, this is not offense. Emory does not have to win. Trump is unique to win, but the case is a good idea. The app addresses the approximate effects of legacies that lead to Trump being president, so we can agree his election is contextual, i.e. that comes from history, which means a meaningful resistance to his power effectively challenges the epistemological environment that led to his rise. Now, the critique first framework, weigh the case against unique link arguments. I've actually just removed the unique part. Weigh the case against link. A, fairness. Power questions are unpredictably moosh. The one you see offense is the only bounce intrinsic impact. Links aren't reciprocal because the plan is the locus of our offense. B is clash. Back and forth engagement creates a skill necessary and then to actualize the alternative. C, fiat. It's desirable and good. Only affording the affirmative defense of a civil service based on what the government should do can effectuate a functioning bureaucracy in the long term because good ideas never get adopted unless we argue for them. That's the Mason evidence. And we don't have to win. The plan literally happens by talking about it, just that it creates good models of governance which are necessary to solve impact. Second, permutation to both. Either shields or the alt can overcome the status quo. The net benefit is case only the app builds coalitions that can work together and take down Trump, which prevents mass violence. Third, theories of debility are ableist, renders disability an affective social state that is universally felt, and then the particular embodiment, annexing inability as capacity and debility as incapacitated ensures able normative binaries that the term their alternative. That's Engel and 15. Poor argues for the ability to move on the binary disabled before it fails to deliver to produce system modification, disabled over for example, one equality, or for politics and nothing dogs, time to capacity, local universal policy, streaming bodies, for first class, the capacity seems to reinforce the conflation of ability, sickness, social modifications for disability, locking impaired universal, the disability merely teaches proportional population, described for negative, and the binary poor feels the challenge of orbit structure, and reject affect, it's wrong, and doesn't solve anything. Vinsol and 25 affect, and the drive policy of the system making prospects and dependent on motion, acting across the social model, political, etc. Topic social employment, media, something affects, which also the corner, place time of committee for worse reduction between complex social population, trying to start, yes, no alternative deliberations, solution argumentation from flex with affective and reactions for neither for or against. 4, group link arguments. The plan turns infrastructural violence. Public unions are key. Boss us in 13. Unions need to be coupled with other models. Example, law is made for committee inside the change the works by proficiently actually accommodating they provide the benefits are encouraging adaptability, disability rights, and issue towards understanding the workplace match with the building's workplace or helps tackle discrimination, public peace, and the constitution research the workplace, and then if it's a commodity work, there's evidence of perfect with disability challenges. You notice that the issue power disability struck the disability of labor one of the issue concerns addressing rampant overlapping concerns public unions and consistent membership much like units of more than average disability struggle with one disability has potential to transform bargaining, and it's necessary to approximately help disabled people in the short term because Trump is attacking stuff like working from home orders, which means that disabled people cannot work for the federal government, and is good if we win our pragmatism arguments. They'll say it's bad, but we'll just bite the bullet and say that doing things approximately that help disabled people are good in the short term, and that can still effectuate the alternative. 5, the plan turns dependency route in 24 particular use of a remedy representation used with the facing legal opportunities for the ADA, this source with universal liberation combination of much of the budget, and to labor rights effectiveness hinges on the bus labor and collective bargaining to reduce stigmatization and shift collective norms of disability. And in 24 years, probably work if works in higher pay enforcement, and then simply help lower gender-based pay gaps, retirement plans higher, like what we're seeing, pay leadership, public positions, address social, the same arbitration of those who play the role in national collective collective benefit. 6. The plan does not inscribe social democracy. It's out of context of the nuclear family. There's no link arguments to this in the 1 and C. To the extent that it does, though, it's good. And also in Article 23, we came late to human rights is from people don't civil rights and defense of the rights for us, slowly progress in the convention negotiation for workers to personal discipline making decisions to insurance changing across the world changing happening in significant way. Don't want to underestimate the policy, but it's true that we face challenges. 7. Extinction is bad, actually. Voting F doesn't require making choices between different groups of people since extinction definitionally affects everyone. We also never embrace utilitarianism, but just consequentialism. You can vote F as a recognition that extinction is a bad consequence without having to quantify people's value. Kohlberg's slippage between literal and non-literal extinction reproduces exceptionalism and conservatism. Simon in 2020. The Kohlberg's classification of extinction renders annihilation average not existing system resource the humans first run closer to humans going stage first so losing this national human exceptional the complex only sensible about literal the sense of extinction depends based on the cancer and transhumanism associated with bioconservatism and existential crisis and heavily generous violence on that level. So only by pausing collective pause rates for management and mitigated Galley et al. And 22 people experienced like social impacts of crisis the stress for the racism and risk communities the threat to disproportionate of violence and stress is how to prepare for the compounding anxiety quality of data invested collective living positive social development agency connection and social capital reduce fear by policy opportunities for future officers left from solving the hard and hence the sense of social process based on student infrastructure harms and well the actions that would lead to burnout collection actions of stress signal positive emotion maintain with the normal decrease of the same process deflecting anxiety trust the agency pedagogy for marginalized communities reality is put people on the first screen savvy interventions could provide a purpose leisure than themselves. 8. We turn the markets link. A. Civil service jobs are the opposite of neoliberal capitalism because people want to serve the public and do so at lower wages than they would in the private sector. The act doesn't make a normative claim that people should work, but rather that they shouldn't be illegally fired by Trump when they do, which is the Bruno evidence, which means permutation to the act and reject neoliberal humanism in themselves. And it's also offense. Wholesale rejection of work misses the boat and denies autonomy. But the F solves Hamlet in 18 nurses love their work conditions are present at work, self-nurture, hospitals, and final social labor, conditional employment, abolition, the constant on the table doesn't speak to people's desire. B. Remaking the government unleashes the market's violence on people with disabilities more by deregulating and demolishing the last checks on billionaires. 9. The alternative fails. It doesn't do the plan, it always rejects the state, which is bad because work is inevitable, so public sector unions should do it. Second, in 24, strengthening labor should be aimed at works in the transition, energy services, necessary labor, housing, food sanitation, etc. The healthcare, education, labor, student performance, laws, relations, remain even different principles of law will be relevant. Example choice. Migration law autonomy is important in this is important to oppose growth and rejection alone fails to do praxis which matters. Alvarez in 17 we've allowed leftists to become loose customer sense of self-definition opposed to concerted political action communicating apples sex way potential different ideological costs never let you there are limited to producing a work life agenda multiple policies trying to keep them informed the arguments mobilizing OPR collectively organs political body was our function to critique the implied goal of raising public awareness enough of the leading measures for political differentiation themselves for reform function encourage exploit trade arguments all from other until my counter arguments not bodies of 1,000 votes of light and trying to outside is trying to outshine each other, vindicate capitalism, neoliberalism, and reject mass media, the creative nationalism, sexually engineered design is ideal for freedom molded from pre-existing models of self-care and endless trick styles to candy store community capitalism instead by into become dependent on self-right. By being all about real tension on the shift and change version of virtuous will listen to the fox things are only split the attractive builder base mobilized like just an excuse always for action. We won't know come. We won't know will come. Mark at we won't know will come. Now the last link argument, I'm unsure sort of what it means, but they'll probably explain it, we'll answer it. But we obviously agree that context matters for informing politics, which but it doesn't matter in terms of solving proximate violence, and there's not one single root cause for the plan. That's foster 25 exos, and then close up in the course of workforce full power relations, the FTC, NRLB, FTC, the ideology, the basis of the European fashion movement, the lines of between not make happening first, well, the same and some wishes and the same replacing the fashion power mobilization first, then other ourselves use neutral hedge with links attacking states, for state power keepers, privatization, government fashion, to listen to reverse the nationalism, and class fashion, substitution, or monopoly, capital, justification, with state ideas, material, we understand my way, not to support ideology and organization. They say condo. Well, conditionality is bad because we cannot test third one, I guess.
Yeah, sure. You prefaced your plan text with "we think that." Why did you do that?
Because we think the plan.
Is this your personal held belief?
I think the plan is probably a good idea.
Okay. How'd you come to that conclusion?
I found it in July and I got convinced that Trump is bad.
Like, how'd you find it in July? Like, what process got you to this conclusion?
Google.com, I think. Or
So-
I think one of my teammates sent me a link about it or something.
You researched, yeah?
That's
Okay.
that's what that is.
We
We agree.
so-
But to be fair, we like if this is a framework thing, we agree that research matters. We agree the things we talk about matters in debate. But it's a question of like how that research
You
and rejoinder works in terms of
moved your
critical
framework
spaces.
into not about unique link. It's just way case.
It's all of it except the word unique.
My
So-
question is then how do we weigh case against links? If we have linked to the epistemology of the app and you have a material impact, how does the judge decide that?
Because we have made defenses of like our material impact and how it relates to the performance of YC. So we've said that we should
but
talk
how does
about
that get weighed
governance and why
against
that's
the
good.
epistemology?
What?
How does that get weighed against epistemology?
Well, like you can say like epistemology matters more than materiality or vice versa. Like we'll debate the fiat K, for example. Like if that's the most important thing, then that's an issue to be debated, and there's like impacts wise. So you could say like it's the most approximate thing, for example.
What do you think
disagree with that?
framework does for you in this context then? Like, I'm really just curious. Why even introduce this argument?
It's mostly there for defense. Like if
Okay.
you say that we don't get to weigh the hypothetical effects of the plan, we disagree. But like we'll debate link arguments.
But how do we weigh the hypothetical impacts of the plan at the scale of out there to the rhetoric you've introduced in here? How do you weigh those against each other? Because they
Well,
operate at different scales.
Impact calculus, which is what I just said. Like you can compare the different things that are going on. You can say why epistemology more than the fiat thing, or vice versa. Or you can say that extinction doesn't outweigh it, which is like a thing you can do.
Okay.
Fiat double bind's kind of get crazy. I want to ask about the
Fiat double bind. I don't
what was
believe
it? Imaginations argument. You said fiat is good because it lets us do radical imaginations. What are these radical imaginations?
So you've read in the 1C that the plan is unlikely to happen because of people like Clarence Thomas. We think that envisioning
But
a
why?
different form
I
of
guess I
government
waited
is
for the 2AC to hear him. What? I don't know what the radical imagination is. What have you said that's
we
radical?
rethink the way that governance should work. So we think it should be more democratically accountable.
You don't
not
even
vested.
expand rights beyond Trump. You just go back to Biden. Your radical imagination is Biden.
That's actually not true because the plan, in effect, strikes down the UET, which we've said is a creeping problem that has
I'm
motivated
sorry, I thought
Democratic
you said
president.
that was not necessary. I'm sorry, I thought you said
We
that was
said
not
we
necessary.
said
for it.
no link and we solve.
So you align your radical imagination is I think Amy Coney Barrett was right when she said I
I
disagree
mean, this
with
is
my
obviously
colleagues in the Supreme
ridiculous. We
Court.
think that the government should be more democratically accountable. We're not saying we think that it
You
would
said it
be
was a radical imagination, the most radical thing you can imagine.
No, Ed, no, I'm not imagining ACB. I'm imagining a government that's democratically accountable, not autocratic, which is very important in this moment.
And
Sorry. Great, I want you. 13 through.
Yep.
The root cause card was on case. That's the Foster one.
you know, record that case. Cool.
Oh, good, because I was getting this right here anyway.
Cool.
Or
Yeah.
like, yeah, they just
No,
said-
what's the one above that? What's that?
Context matters from
Beautiful.
It was, it was. 4.
I'm so scared of the org fair. It's like the day after we get back. And I have no clue what Luke and Lily are cooking up for the flyers. And I'm really
I trust
scared.
Luke.
You should not trust Luke. Luke is the last person you should trust on this.
Okay.
Better than Sam. Sam is. He went from like Bernie socialist to like. He really wants us all to get guns. Like he's really up on us arming ourselves. That might be university org. That would be very bad.
Oh, he means as the YDSA at Iowa, he would like us armed.
We should become militant.
Okay, I appreciate that energy, and I appreciate it in lots of spaces, and that space to bring that energy is not the Iowa YDSA. He is welcome to do that.
My
No,
apologies. I'm
was-
fat and I need some food.
Good.
I was over there orchestrating the Uber Eats.
I
They
was,
over there big chilling. So
I was eating mac and cheese during the
yeah,
one.
that shit was not good.
What? Okay,
I'm not gonna
well,
lie, I was kind of underselling.
I mean, we can have that debate, but I don't think you want to.
oh, you know what? And I'm not saying the mac and cheese wasn't good. I'm saying it was food. Like,
Yeah,
it was
and
it was
we're
sweet.
beyond the food stage. I need something good.
You know
Y'all
what? Fair
requiring a
enough.
lot of energy from me.
Okay, the order is case, and then the critique.
Understood.
Framework and the alt are the one and R.
You answered my question. Okay.
I'm not sick, I just wear masks. Sorry, I coughed. I took the mask off and then coughed, and I was like, that was a bad look. Everybody good? Okay. A lot of this radicalism debate is going to be adjudicated on the unitary executive arguments on the case page. You should extend the 1 and C dot 25 evidences, quotes justices who want to check UET, saying the conservative majority is, quote, raring to do away with constraints on the unitary executive. This means that because the overturning of the unitary executive theory is not a mandate of the plan, there is no way they can win reverse causal evidence, which means Trump uses this as one of a number of justifications for their Perez evidence, and plan overturns it. They're wrong. Courts love it, and they're delighted to expand presidential power in every way possible. Chemerinsky 25 is not allowing other than unitary executive theories rejected by Rehnquist. The court's current majority seems ready to undo Rehnquist's work to embrace Scalia's hand, calling for a more powerful presidency. This also answered. Now, I will also extend the Loomis piece of evidence. They have critiqued nationalism as bad and then said that the solution is to make unions patriotic again. They cannot change the minds of anybody like Trump. He operates on a cult of personality, which means that professionalism is entirely irrelevant. This also answers their no affect and no cause pieces of evidence, because there, when I see Mason card says, quote, there's only a loose connection between policy substance and electoral outcomes. To argue that a better program will help the Dems is not something one can say with any confidence. I don't think people voted for Trump because of his platform, whatever that is. What matters is a larger vision and persona and program. It also means the theory of power turns case and is a reason about negative perception. K.
Infrastructural violence makes eugenics a necessary backdrop of our political deliberation by catching life between productivist ideologies and the disavowal of dependency as demands of colonial racial capitalism. Your role of the ballot is to vote for the best performance or method that resists eugenics. Your role of the judge is to vote for a debate space that disrupts the infrastructures of violence sustained by the world. At the end of this debate, the question you should ask is who becomes the living infrastructure for Emory's fantasy of independence? One C. Kim says the rights-based appeal to restore federal workers to their full productivity again ingrains ableism in two ways. One is debilitation, positing labor as redemptive relies on eugenics to enforce mass complacency with the wage. Those who fail to make production standards of the so-called average worker are pushed into informal economies, incarcerated in asylums and prisons, and subject to sterilization. That's one C. Rosenthal. Two is capacitation. The affirmative grants disabled people the right to work themselves to death. Rights disavow dependency by heroicizing the individual resilient subjects who can pull themselves up by the bootstraps to sell their labor on markets and to be productive within the government, which is why labor reform is disavowed. Underside is the intensified exploitation of undocumented workers paid under the table, the creation of exploitative workfare programs, and the carving out of exemptions for minimum wage laws for incarcerated and disabled people. The demand for productivity can only valorize life insofar as it can engage in reciprocal exchange in a competitive marketplace, which gets mirrored in debates through the demand to produce political solutions that are legible to eugenic policymakers and ultimately rescue the government itself from its own contradictions. Now, 2AC1 is framework. That's the one in R. 2AC2 is the permutation. It begs the question of the link. So I'll do the productivity link here. The infrastructure of Emory's research is based around the unquestioned value. It's based around the unquestioned value of productivity. Oh no, I lost my entire link debate. Let me pull this up really quick. Oh, yeah. That's bad. Yes, okay. Okay. I believe. Yeah, that was really bad. Okay. So when I see perfects the ties between productivism and the workplace, think about how their solvency evidence says that federal workers are unique, exemplary, and revolutionary because, quote, work serves as a vehicle to fulfill a personal need to experience a meaningful life. This is what I quoted in cross-text of the Wendy C. Bruno and Grant piece of evidence. This is the implicitly eugenic calculation that marks disabled life as not meaningful and not worth living because disability is a site of anti-productivity for the market. So the Wendy C's movements mark disability as a site of incoherence, a drain on resources, and a lack of meaning. You should be particularly skeptical since the same piece of evidence goes on to conclude that attacks on federal workers are wrong because it would be bad if they were a drain on resources that, quote, imposes a financial burden on citizens. But due to the fact that their capacity for productivity gives their lives value and meaning, federal workers are not. When I see Bruno and Grant 16 says, quote, weakening the institutional unjustified characterized as imposing a financial burden on citizens. This is the kind of rhetoric that is the precursor to elimination of disabled people who would be viewed as the ultimate financial burden on citizens whose lives cannot be meaningful. This is things like the welfare queen stereotype, or how disabled people are cast as selfish or burdens on the state and leftist groups alike for things like requesting necessary accommodations, means the allies with conservatives, invoking and building upon those same stereotypes that continuously pathologize, for example, black communities as deficient because of the presumption that they are not working or not working hard enough. Now, the permutation proper. One is that links are not that disabled people are excluded. They are about how violent inclusion happens by making disabled people the infrastructure of our politics. So their arguments that coalitions are good are non-responsive. Two is that links are disads. I did them above, I'll do them below. Third is cost-benefit disad. The form of the permutation requires you not cost-benefit analysis as decision-making framework, but that is uniquely eugenic in the context of disability. Tammy 21, cost-benefit analysis carries the concession that cost me a valid reason to say no, we don't want disad decisional framework because the interest at stake in how easy craft austerity cost narratives to right well from others are a prominent example that foregrounds the obvious question leaves unasked the hard question in the disability context, casting some needs as cost and asking those people show their worth rather than how they ended up inside the ledger to begin. The fourth is a rights decide. The content of the permutation removes coherence from the alternative by reducing it to the language of disability rights and reform, and removes the necessary vocabulary to articulate how capital structurally guarantees debilitation. So 22 rights in liberal capitalist economies must fall short of rounding the oppression focusing on the struggle of disabled persons for the right to labor rather than the right to labor. We should shape assessing based on understanding disability as a socially constructed category derived from labor relations. Capitalist economy creates positive disposable persons rights legislation. Individuals take a base remove coherence from political practice, even though as militant organizations take for granted the existing economic arrangements from imagining the world which marginalized. Get a chance to compete with those dominant value bodies for the jobs that misery most. Now, 2C3, this theories of debility are constitutionally ableist. This is the angle to evidence. This card is not fundamentally not responsive. A sub point, this is about Jasper Poir. B sub point, we have theorized disability as a structural position that is inevitabilized by capitalism, which is the one that sees outside evidence, which this piece of evidence agrees is the desirable way to do so. C sub point, they cannot solve, so there is no uniqueness for this this indite of our theory of disability studies, and they refuse to take us up on it. Now, the fourth, because they have said like productivism is good, that is your only alternative. Now, the fourth argument is that affect is wrong. That was done on this is the Wenzel evidence. It was done on the case debate above because it says that Trump is a cult of personality, which can only explained at that level. Now, the fifth piece of evidence is that federal unions solve. This is their best piece of evidence. The tag of this evidence is an explicit concession and agreement that the notion of productivity is ableist. No takebacks. It was done above. 2, this evidence proves the only frame for how and why disability matters in the context of the affirmative is insofar as it benefits a collective, which means they could be right that some unions include some disabled people. We are are winning that the basis for the YC's research is constitutionally ableist. 2C Basses 13 says, quote, if people with disabilities are provided for, then the workplace may reflect other values of significance to all workers. The act of accommodating may provide third-party benefits, which proves that they still require the extraction of disabled people in order to cohere their movements. Now, 2C6 is the plan turns dependency. This is the brown piece of evidence. Its warrant is that the ADA was good. I will answer that here. First, the fact that disabled people have used rights to survive in the face of ongoing eugenic violence should not prove that rights are good. On the contrary, it proves the oppressive conditions foreclose our lives and our abilities to live outside of them and throw us a crumb. 2, if rights were so effective, they would not produce a system of eugenics in the first place. 3, the AF's vision of liberatory disability politics is the ADA. In the context of labor, that rigs the calculus in favor of employees, which proves ableism is structural in a way the law, the program, and the AF alone can't capture. ABA 98 employers win most ADA complaints, 92%, even in circuit the favor. Most papers employs the ADA was supposed to protect people with disabilities. The definition of disability was restrictive. There's a catch. 22 employees have to have a severe enough disability, but it has to be so severe they are unable to do the job. Now, the 7th argument is that collective bargaining rights decrease stigma solved for people with disabilities. This is wrong because it presumes a link turn at the scale of this debate, but remember that the AF is only their rhetoric in this debate. The 8th argument is that the plan is social democracy, and that is good. This is the most piece of evidence. You are not social democracy. That was the case debate about nationalism, but imagining but they have dropped that imagining a world that the warrant to this piece of evidence is the warrant, the one and C link to social democracy is that it imagines a world without disability, which I will do the link to right here. The 9th argument and 10th argument are answers to the extinction debate. The warrant as to why they say that extinction quote turns the critique for their Galloway evidence is that extinction quote causes anxiety. This proves our link to narrative prosthesis because it presumes the impact of the K is disability occurs. That is wrong. Disability is an inevitable outcome and structural position necessitated by competitive marketplaces, but this is the trope of narrative prosthesis whereby disability can only be apprehended as an impact. This is magnified by one piece of evidence that says right-wing ideologies will spread like diseases, which is their Homer-Dixon evidence that talks about, quote, Trump's response is unlikely to measure. The strength of contagion would vary. Malaise would exacerbate stress worldwide. This uses things like contagion and malaise as a stand-in for impacts which abjects to save life and treats it as negative value. There's also a second layer to this link because by the end of this card, contagion becomes migrants have diseases. This is a slippage that guarantees our rhetoric turns eugenic. When I see Homer-Dixon all 24, Trump cracked on migrants to prevent virus testing and enhancing contagion. That link turns far-right movements to the rhetoric of eugenics is what makes Trump win, not the other way around. Link turns the advantage of the rhetoric energizes their rhetoric energizes Trump. Also, fiat illusory solves the impact. Now, the next argument they make, group like 10, 11, and 12, these are all arguments about permutation due the AF and link turns. I will do the professional norms link here. The one I see mobilized is on supposedly universal and apolitical value professionalism. They frame as uniting all workers. The problem is that making professionalism universal rights out disability and collectivity through marking professional experience as a prerequisite having one's voice heard. When I see Mason says, quote, professional norms are the organizing principle here. That is a fundamentally ableist standard because disabled people's expertise and professionalism is always in question. It comes from embodied experience, like planning how to make events accessible, what to do when you experience medical gaslighting, sharing meds, all skills that don't come from professional degree. The AF would capitulate to professional opinions like things like Autism Speaks, which relies on advice given by scientists, doctors, and other professionals to create PR campaigns like your child be autistic will bankrupt you and destroy your family, and to advocate for, quote, cures for autism, i.e. genetic testing and selective abortion of fetuses that might be autistic. The When removes the ability to even enunciate professionalism as a deeply political ableist standard for this place when it disconnects those, quote, shared values from our politics. I will have Gray read the link turns case card in the webinar.
All right, then.
Okay, yeah. Oh, you're sorry.
Oh, we're taking time. Okay.
No.
No.
Okay. I'm just gonna start.
That was 35. All right.
I'm good.
All right. Yeah, you're good. Okay. Basic question, do you think like something like the Clean Air Act or the Clean Water Act, these are good ideas? Like they've been good for society?
Good question. Well, that wasn't the act, though.
I'm just asking.
That was not the affirmative.
Just yes or no.
I think
I
that
know,
your
I know,
affirmative
I
in this
know,
debate is that. This is how questions are always displayed. Like questions of things like, was the 1EC's
Okay.
rhetoric bad, are always displayed.
Okay, I'll get to the actual
Okay.
reason I asked that question in relationship to the YC. Okay, so the productivity link, it seems like there's some sort of slippage between this conception of productivity and like instrumentality, like solving things or attempting to place the
No.
value of labor.
No.
So,
The-
for example, you said that the 1EC frames that the only like benefit of the plan is that workers provide some sort of a value to everybody else, which
No, the argument is that your piece of evidence is like work is necessary to live a meaningful life. This is magnified by the 1AC evidence that talks about that refers to loss of workers as a quote, brain drain.
No. Okay, so the evidence we have read says that when you graduate from whatever you want to work, you can choose between the government and the private sector, and the private sector pays you more. But the government, you can do something like if you're really passionate about climate change, and that's what you're passionate about, then you can do that, right? So what part of the 1AC do you think you're contesting by saying that the people that care about climate change, they say they care about climate
The
change, and Trump
problem
has fired
is that
them.
your rhetorical defense of this says
You
that
found
in
the
order
part
to
that-
live a meaningful life, we must
No,
do things like
People,
work.
this card says that people care about the work they do for the government. Where do you think it says that the only thing that matters for a valuable life is working for the government?
Work in the public sector serves as a vehicle to fulfill a need to experience a meaningful life. I
For
am
these people that
confused.
want to do this, right? But this doesn't say that it's the only thing
This
that's
says
beneficial.
that
This is
your
ridiculous.
warrant
It's
for why
ridiculous.
you don't link to our arguments about unions on case is because federal workers, unlike others, find unique meaning in their careers. Like, yes, this piece of evidence does say specific to.
Wait, do you disagree that like someone works for the EPA, they make less money than they would otherwise because they
We
like
think
solving
that your
climate change?
depoliticization of this in the
What
first
about
place.
that's depoliticization? Like,
You're
these are
like, it's
workers that-
neutral. It's not. That's our
Wait,
argument.
what? When did we say that? We said that these people,
Oh,
when
so
interviewed, they say, this is what I want to do for the government. And Trump fired them because they're doing shit like regulating fossil fuels.
No.
What piece of evidence, like where in this do you think that says that this is depoliticizing? The whole 1AC is political. We understand the context. I don't understand this link argument at all.
So the questions that you are asking adopt the implicit position that there's nothing wrong with the defense of, work as a tool to find meaning in your life. Our argument is that when we adopt those standards as the basis for our social movements, radical imaginations, and thought
Okay.
projects, that those outcomes are eugenic.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
Expertise, actually, I don't have enough time to talk about this.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Schrodinger's joke. No, I didn't mean it that way.
Take about 30 seconds.
Okay.
You are taking a breath?
Yeah.
You know, actually.
What do you,
I can,
just tell me.
the ones here, because I think there's gonna be new ones.
And then great, I'm sorry.
Okay, just to read this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Alright,
Just
we have 9 now.
beer can be-
Cool. We have-
Okay. Winner is sent. Order is cleaning up the end of the 2NC that Spencer didn't get to, so the professionalization, long-term space card, and whatever other one he's about to hand me?
Yeah.
Question mark? Cool. Then framework and the
R.I.P. Okay.
Oh my mama, that was quick, fast. And come on, Newark. Sorry. Thank you so much. Can I ask you for one more favor? Who do I owe money to? You? Okay. How much was this?
So 15
And can you bring me another one, please?
You just need one?
Yeah, I'll take two.
Two
I
ones?
don't know who the fuck these.
Yeah.
Here. 15.
Okay.
15. Tell her I said thank you. Too. Is it?
Just a K in the order of finishing up the card Spencer didn't get to in the framework. Basically.
Thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Alright, you good?
Give me 1 second to fix my post. You said it's the end of the 2C framework and then alt. Okay. I need to connect for Okay, I'm good.
First, the link turns case because embodiment precedes ability to be perceived and professional in the first place. The app believes that all it takes to write Trump is a little bit of professionalism is wrong. They've introduced scholarship to those people doing this work that professionalism is not a viable training for political action. Conclusion of 1 AC Harrison and London 24. Participant co-workers distrust him because of their experience working with communities. Crystal described being opposed to agency call by felt threatened by her expertise seemed to undermine her as a Latina professionalization routinely undermines work with predominantly white institutions. The staff decries him as taking resources away from white communities. White men get to speak with emotion, cloak to his reason. If I matched his energy, I would have been written off by colleagues mentioning having a black woman that EJ planners such silently exhausting activities turn regulatory agency burn out, especially women in Colorado. It will take a huge toll on the emotion. And QAC 12 is rejecting work bad. That's a Henwood evidence. Warrant is nurses' unions. Those perpetuate structural ableism. CAR 23. The PCA unions engage in collective bargaining, structural ableism pervasive from the union disabled demand for control, choice, and dignity pushed off this. Pits marginalized groups against each other. People's lives in the balance, low game for power and money plays that. Cool. Frank. Framing issue. Debate isn't a site of instrumental policy making, but a site of rhetorical exchange. Therefore, our counter-interpretation is evaluate the OIC as a political, affective, and research object, and vote negative if we want to link to their imaginary or the epistemic orientations that sustain it. The net benefit is reorganization of dependency. Their interpretation is built on the infrastructure of unquestioned productivity. One of these Avistana says interdependence is inevitable. The fantasy of perfect rejoinder as exchange requires the disavowal of interdependence. Their model presumes you're a flow machine, not a human, by making you the infrastructure of this debate. You can never write fast enough to catch every word we say, but they want you to. That proves your relationship to capacity comes prior to your ability to adjudicate this round, so art impacts sequence fairness. You should evaluate this debate as someone with a body. Don't discount your investments in your politics, your body, your life in this room to participate in a fantasy of fairness that will require we eliminate difference and capacity towards productivity. And no middle ground. You won't decide the AF gets the AF and the neg gets the K. It's arbitrary judge interventions and de facto grants in their model since it looks like an AF ballot or extinction wave every time, which proves our argument about how violent infrastructures inevitabilize the sacrifice of some for others. Now, we have 4 dissents to their interpretation. First is resilience CDA. The 2AC said rejoining DAF is good because it will give them the skills to refine argumentation. We have impact turn this because it makes them better at rhetorically outflanking dissent. There's an external overcoming impact. They've said we should simply get over the ableist premises of the AF and use our speech time to convince them that disabled people matter. That sequence is clash because even if we could overcome the eugenic violence of the AF, that is not true of all the disabled people who can't and are not here to rejoinder and render this criticism. Their interpolarized unpredictable limits is the internal link to both fairness and clash. I'll do defense to it here. First, AF choice solve. Infinite prep meanings links are unforced errors that flips internally because only Emory could predict what scholarship they chose to read. 2. Resolution guarantees the K fiat comes from should, and the resolution means our K is coordinate ground akin to a state's counterplan. 3. Lip checks. Zavistana says epistemic interrogation disability is inseparable from questions of labor, so they're arbitrarily limits out core topic lip. 4. Proximity filters. The 2 and C link debate made a substantive critique of the grounding premise of the AF with deep engagement across their evidence. Proves we're not unpredictable or arbitrary. Think about this like a reasonability argument. Even if another team in another debate could use our interpret to read 100 word picks, that's the problem for a judge in that debate, not for you in this one. That means second, we have an intellectual contract DA. Their model critical limits there's a bound to the intellectual contract that weaponizes procedurality, deny disabled people's epistemic agency. Bristle and Rafa 24. Intellectual contract that tends to perceive humans white, masculine, and able-bodied. The intellectual contract stereotypes racialized but denies their agency and knowledge seekers. Stereotypes disabled people incapable of exercising epistemic agency. Particular students are denied identity as knowledge producers. Their assumption disabled students are unable to function normally due to deficit creation in North American universities tied to land appropriation, eugenic exploitation of disabled individuals. Coloniality excludes knowledge of people who deviate from the white male able bodies. Intellectual contract racialized disabled bodies are disabled racialized people criteria that disqualify people's steps of human use. Vote as a contract which explains why these institutions devalue people with disabilities as well as other folks. And means third, we have a hermeneutical injustice DA. The hyper-focus on productivity of rational discourse epistemically silences disabled people's experiences which are considered unintelligible under their model. Mandala T25. Hermeneutical injustice happens to actual communication subject unjustly assumed from intelligibility. Disabled people continue to be habitually subjected to hermeneutical injustice. Disabled people are hindered in the capacity to interpret phenomena which are personal and political. Mark at political. Emory concedes this impact and once he Hewer agrees policy-making spaces are overturned by churches like ableism and dependency. Hewer in Collins 24. Actors with radically different welfare reliant mothers and super rich are rewarded different levels of credibility in policy-making spaces. And means finally, there's a whole new sentence CA. The inevitable slip between evaluate the plan's consequences and evaluate the plan using consequentialism proves our theory of ableism. It is through the obfuscation of what implicates the people in this room that happens here compared to that justifies and produces moral panics of disabled life out there. There's an answer to all the consequentialism argument we want to go for because one, One, framework is a prior question to being able to access that scale of impact calculus in the first place. Second, there's a fiat deadline. Either the impacts are inevitable because when does not get actualized fast enough to stop them, or you should presume negative because their impacts are fabricated constructions of how the world works. And three means no extinction outweighs valid. That is how the sort occurs that reifies ableism in spaces like debate. And means 2A2 is fairness. I'll answer it here. 1. Sequencing. Existence of debate is a prerequisite of fairness. The links to DA's proof they sacrifice disabled debate is for it. 2. Paradox is wrong. Drinking water is universal precondition. Doesn't entail maximize. 3. Turn. It's less fair to let them do so when I see 9-minute 1 AC to a 9-second context, especially in a world in which they justify all their offense using the epistemological justifications of the 1 AC, which definitely fits it. And 4. Ballot can't solve, but it can't say no to endorsing the 1 AC productive infrastructure. Clash largely answered above, but no skills as resiliency data and cross-sector data have no access to internal links. The question is this debate just being a question of the radical imagination. 1 AC means winning a link should be sufficient, otherwise they don't meet their own interpretation because they limit out our ability to get links to their imagination. Colbert, no offense there, I did that above on the whole new sentence DA. We are not going for a proper, but the extinction debate is framed out by framework alternative. Remember that interdependence is inevitable. It's a question of how it's organized. I mean, your ballot is a choice. Either deny it as Amen weaves us all, or stay complicit within violent infrastructure. That means the Zephyr evidence is A, unresponsive because it's bad degrowth, that's all I see. B, proves the link because the evidence says law is good because it's self-sufficient. The rejection alone fails argument are A, refusal is a prior question. Now, condo, not condo, you didn't ask, we're not. And narrative prosthesis link, no root, the root cause follower evidence is irrelevant because that's the came out.
Okay, we have
It's in Word.
What are y'all getting for dinner?
We actually have no idea.
It's a contentious issue, actually. Oh my gosh, it's already 7.
Let's see how the kids are doing. Sorry, my kids are in the state tournament. I'm not doing prep. I'm checking Tyra right now.
Is it Kansas?
It's Minnesota.
Oh, okay. Because Kansas is also this weekend.
Oh yeah, I think I knew that vaguely.
Do you coach a Kansas school?
I'm just from Kansas.
Sure.
Okay, so the computer's loading slow. There's no phone. Let's see. I feel like they just changed it again right now. Well, I've texted Nolan. We'll see. Oh, they do this annoying thing where they have like the results spreadsheet and they don't publish it on Tabram because Minnesota literally would like to sabotage debate at every possible chance it gets. Horrible. Right, I'm just throwing a link to the spreadsheet and everything so I can get it on my computer. Let's see.
He writes down 320 so I won't forget. If you have it.
Yeah.
Jack, did we ever debate in high school?
I don't really remember debates. Like, that's one of my big things. I remember like 3 tournaments out, and that's it.
What 3 tournaments are?
Wake, Gonzaga, Georgetown.
I'm
The most recent 3. That rocks.
Yeah, it's always the most recent.
I'm dead.
After this, I have no idea what happened at Wake.
So Wake is about to go.
Yeah.
Which is good. That's actually good for us.
Yeah.
With Wake goes.
She
Yeah.
had a rough week.
So, at your request, I felt like I put framework separate.
Yeah.
That's how you want it?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it at the top of the case so it like makes more sense.
Wherever you want it, I could go back and forth. I'm fine.
Okay.
But it is separate, so you know.
The order in that case is just case, framework. Yeah, it basically starts on framework and then the truancy.
Okay, good.
Is everyone good?
Good.
Conceded terminals makes the chartered eye for institutional capacity to stock chop. Other ways as foreign policy, climate change, and capital governance can power and cost extinction. It means it up and event to the curve ways. Briefly notes all case news that the plans necessary for both teams' offense. Ability impacts pragmatically. The can't solve dependency single-handedly, but it's resolving proximate links. A modified governance that ways, even if they win some offensive links. Course, love UET is our uniqueness arguments. The plan forces it to oppose an external back on the executive because their collective bargaining rates are upheld. Courts justices would have no choice but to call the rest of trust extensive use of governance into question. But we can win without to deliver. They dropped that as skilled, non-partisan workforce controls the largest portfolio of catastrophic risks ever, including climate change, food crises, and more, which is independent of the spillover arguments. The Mason link is relevant. Okay, people voted for Trump at 5. The substance of what the civil servants is still relevant because they control the provision of public goods, and I was dropped that the ones who can't be fired at will are better at their jobs and solve our impacts. They thus improve affect. They've dropped the treaties to impact her to their frame, their consumption, constrains affect to simple yes no questions, which homogenizes different groups, and then types of responses into a singular category, makes compromise impossible, and is independently violent because I was able to speak for others. But structure turns affect. Governance creates problems that where affects will be responded to. Affect is informed by politics, which is the treaty evidence. Extinction at ways means a reason that the alt fails as an act ballot. Iowa has no alternative ethical system for the block, and it's given to irreversibly grants possibilities of resistance in life, which turns the alternative into a distinct ontological condition. Causes mass suffering in the interim, which is our indicted the Kohlberg evidence. Use consequentialism. Any alternative collapses into itself, and no other model can compare relative harm they conceded. Then any alternative to weighing and cost-benefit analysis lapses into eugenics because it requires you to make arbitrary evaluations about whose life counts, which answers their distance to the permutation. Now the K role of the judge is to vote for the team that wins their offensive ways per framework. The role is self-serving, but Link offense proves that we went under their model because they bring up more eugenics per the turns case arguments. Now framework weight the case versus the K that solves their offense in 2 impacts. One is clash, excluding one 1AC offense prohibits nuance testing. It turns, okay, it only cautionalizes us to break down biases that uphold ableism. The case is independently offense against their interpretation because civil service protections will never happen absent people arguing for them, which is amazing evidence. Second is fairness, ignoring the plan to pervert our strategy, unpredictably modifying win conditions, and moving the central justification for all of our representations. It ways the ballot prevents an unfair loss, but cannot prevent scholarship from being read. They also just like they flow and just like judge intervention, proving mutual investments. Now, there's no offense to the exclusion offense because they get links, which also are offense, but they have to be framed through the plan, and we get to weigh the case against it. Middle ground is possible. The webinar is explaining a skill issue. You can win extinction doesn't outweigh or link turns case arguments that disprove background arguments, and teams regularly do so. Now, the capacity stuff doesn't turn fairness. Absolute fairness is imperfect, but you should aim to maximize it because I would be upset if you didn't vote on a dropped argument. The middle ground stuff I answered about resiliency to said they have not impact turned our skills. If anything, our model rewritten reduces ableism because people are confronted with alternative conceptions and forced to engage things like their scholarship. Actors does not solve any of our offense because if a single issue with the 1AC can be presented as a negative win condition in literature, similarly cannot check for the above. The intellectual context is said, as well as the other dissents are largely irrelevant because we never said plan focus or even unique links. We have just said that you must engage the case and we get to weigh the case against your stuff in response because the plan frames all of our representations. App choice is fearless without weighing the plan, etc. FIA is good, but you can't win FIA's bad against the plan. Literature the fails when you go to the joke in the plan. Moving the plan is perpetually unreasonable. It's not a question of reasonability because we have links to their in-round practice. Now, the other answers to fairness are largely non-responsive or not plan focused, so there's no reverse fairness stuff, and we agree water is a prerequisite to debate as fairness is. Now, perm do both. The net benefit is the entire case, rejecting professionalism in the civil service guarantees it is monopolized by Trump and collapses administrative function. It doesn't reduce the movement to rights. It acknowledges CBRs are contingently good, but not the end-all be-all politics because it incorporates their refusal in other forms. All literally doesn't do anything to grapple with or respond to the links, resolve the links, so reject pre-refusal because it agreements balance and makes links non-unique and non-solvable. We are link turning productivity. These answers both debilitation and capacitation. Workers choose the private sector and public sector and care about their jobs. So what I see doesn't impose any value on that, but we agree that people can care about their work and that they should have jobs to stop capitalist accumulation in a capitalist world. The alternative is forced entrance into the private sector and selling out. The relight is a swing and a miss. Who says that workers care about their jobs, that everyone should work, which was cross-sex. They have conceded words from both Harrison and Foster in the 1AC. They said that capitalism makes stability inevitable, but federal workers slow down capitalism in two ways. One, accumulation. Workers impose regulations and environmental standards when they take through the EPA. They tax corporations. They challenge Republican scant election data that empowers movements on the outside who require a stable system to resist distinguish the Harrison evidence. Second is Trump. His assault on federal employees can only be understood as an attempt to consolidate his personalism and entrenched corporatist rule throughout the government because they challenge his agenda. That's the Foster evidence. To the extent that they win a link argument, it's to instrumentality, which we are impact turning. Doing things is good, especially for disabled people who need a stable environment or regulations to help them. That is good in the short term and commensurate with their telos, which is the birth dollar evidence. And the block basically drops its inevitable. The government requires people to do work, otherwise people cannot access stuff like healthcare or electricity. The rates I said was 30 seconds of the block. They're good, disabled movements use rights to concretize social change. It's what they're advocating for and has led to solidarity. It is particularly true in the context of this 1AC. The 2AC can see the argument that disabled people can't do work if they want to for their battle work coming because Trump's banned workers working from home as part of his act. So extinction is bad. Iowa gives no alternative metrics about their links are about historical usage of utilitarianism. We said consequentialism, so there's no link to that. You can agree both ableism and extinction are bad. Link turns case arguments mean that we access it better. Our argument is not that disability occurs as a result, but that extinction harms disabled people. And then that matters. Contagion link is wrong. It's highlighted out of context. It wasn't read in the 1AC, and it doesn't outweigh the case. We are impact turning expertise, but stopping disease spread is good because the 1AC evidence says it's necessary to cure pandemics that can cause large-scale impacts like COVID, and that is not bad disabled rhetoric to say, but like COVID was bad, obviously. I was examples of blaming autism for doctors being bad is because Trump has unlimited authority in the CDC. They have zero evidence that this is the outcome of our expertise, which is necessary in this instance to solve proximate violence. We don't have to solve all of labor, and that's not our point. I have a lot of time.
You do?
The impacts to the links about professionalization are wrong. We do not say that life is only valuable because of work, but federal workers find meaning in their jobs, and we should let them. That doesn't mean that everyone must find meaning in their jobs, but rather the federal civil service is better if it's professionalized. Bargaining rights solves the impact to the links. Federal unions advocate for workplace accommodations like work from home, which was the 2EC example that they have dropped. They also defend workers in employment discrimination suits, which means there's no impact to black workers or disabled workers or whoever investing sort of faith in union movements because they can see all the examples of why that was good, and it's on par better if you have rights when you work.
Alright, we had 7:41 if I remember.
Yes, I agree with you. Let me think about that. And let me meditate on it more.
Yep.
finish.
The line lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Actually, maybe that wouldn't be the most helpful. Can you do all this line by line?
Yep.
Just, maybe not. You know what? Maybe I just had to give it to him all the time and give it to him.
Yeah, I think
Then why don't you?
it tends to mess you up when I use one.
Yeah, I agree. Why don't you extend this bit?
I got you.
case and then the K, which will be in the. Huh? You're good. Case and then the K, which will be in the order of the block. So like.
Gotcha. This is when it gets real.
That's true.
It's getting real.
Oh.
It's my favorite part.
Yay.
Everything before this was warm up.
These last two, man, you're like, oh shit. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, man, I'm sorry.
Oh no. Okay.
You will not cast a ballot on Extinction at Ways because its rhetoric, the warrants for this is bad. This will by and large be on the critique debate, but I will answer the advantage here. They have conceded two pieces of evidence, and they are not extending non-responsive assertions that the affirmative says unitary executive theory will be overturned. This is wrong. They have card 0 on this. We've read two very good cards that say that the court will do literally everything but overturn it. If they're right about plan focus and knowing the skills, then they clearly do not know the skills that are necessary to convince those justices to not overturn it in the first place, which means that they can never solve their offense. Their argument about pragmatism flips negative because the affirmative is not pragmatic. They have not told you how to get to the world they want you to get to, but their appeals to a, quote, skilled workforce on the plan as the internal link to their impacts is the kind of professionalism that renders disabled people as a waste and a drain on the collective. Critique. Productivity creates an illusion of independence that capacitates some, but that is made possible through the debilitated living infrastructure that enables their expansion of rights for federal workers. The link debate has traced the scholarly investments in productivity that cohere the justifications for their affirmative, as well as their interpretation of what good debate entails. They have mishandled the role of the judge and the role of the ballot. The role of the judge is to vote for a debate space that disrupts the infrastructures of violence sustained by the world, which means that you should be skeptical of their "but we are socialism" or link turns the K claims and give more weight to our arguments about why professionalism is a violent standard. The role of the judge filters your role of the ballot, which is to endorse the best performance or method for resisting eugenics. Insofar as we have won a link, theirs is certainly not. Their only argument is just an assertion that you should evaluate who did the better debating, but this filters what the better debating means in the first place. I'm going for the professionalization link at the top. The 1AC mobilizes around the supposedly universal and apolitical value of professionalism as the way they imagine Trump can be checked, which is their 1AR on case. We have lines from cross-ex from the 1AC Mason card and from the 1AR that prove the link. Professionalization is a fundamentally ableist standard because some kinds of knowledge that fly under the radar because they are not acknowledged and recognized as a professional and official credentials that are required to be a scientist. Empirics, like Autism Speaks, prove that when we refer to professionalism, i.e. the norms of dead doctors and scientists, the outcome is speaking over disabled people to enforce eugenics, like how Autism Speaks consulted scientists and concluded that autism should be eliminated and cured or it will destroy families. I'm referencing the PR campaign that Autism Speaks did in 2007 to ground this, which means that their only answer of the plan solves because it was Trump and the unchecked executive is absolutely non-responsive. The case cannot solve the impacts to it. I've also conceded that when in our reading of their piece of evidence that the link turns case is at the conclusion of their author's evidence that says professionalization. It's not the neutral standard that 2R will paint a picture of when they're like, but some people want to do their jobs. This interviews fed workers, disabled people, women of color, queer people who are like, professionalism as a standard to unite around burns me out because my embodied reality requires more work and can never be seen as professional. It implicates their ability to solve and then check Trump even under their framework because the people who are empowered by the abstract term of professionalism as a norm are not those who are burnt out and who might check in, but those who are not recognizable as technical experts in a particular field, but only those who are recognizable as technical experts, i.e. white non-disabled men, are the ones who will benefit from the affirmative but will ultimately never fight for what's best for their communities. That is an impact to the link that turns case under their framework or ours because it's a recapitulation of respectability politics. Their big push on this is we destruct capitalism because we push people away from the private sector. One, this is doublespeak. Remember, they read a card in the ultimate in the 2AC that was like degrowth would be bad if it happens. So this is ultimately a false promise that covers over the ultimately eugenic aspirations to grow the economy. Two, even if they win that they abolish capitalism, they do not abolish the standards of professionalism. At the heart of them, or Zavitsano's evidence is a critique of socialism as much as capitalism, which is why they say that, quote, this is a problem for Marxism as well. This is why Mao denied canteen rations to disabled people who were seen as burdens on the party and not professional enough to become a part of the vanguard. The links beat the permutation and they drop the card to cost-benefit analysis to set to the cost-benefit of but case turns the K that the 2R will sound good on to justify the permutation or the app alone is the kind of analysis that rationalizes the infrastructural and eugenic violence that we have indicted as something you should refuse under your role of the ballot. Now, their reform good arguments cite the ABA. You can extend the ABA 1998 card. The act vests false neutrality and legal recourse for ableism. To prove discrimination against disabled people requires an advocate's burden that is so high that 93% of those who are even able to try and access courts in the first place do not win, so they can never give the disabled people the skills that we need to navigate the system's framework. Our interpretation is that you should value the one you see as a political and ideological artifact. They have dropped a proximity filter, which beats AF at scale, good, and extinction outweighs. Your ballot cannot stop extinction, but it can refuse to join with Emory to build an infrastructure that requires the sacrifice of disabled life. I'm doing the resiliency decide at the top. Their framework argument is that if we engage them in the way that they want us to, then we will give them the skills they need to implement the AF IRL. This is our thesis claim about infrastructures, because it makes us into the living infrastructure of their model in the abstract and of their skills in specific. This wears us down to build them up, because even if we could prove them wrong in this way by outperforming them to convince them we should not sacrifice disabled people for a better future, our impact turn is to the implicit demand for resiliency that they force disabled people to occupy in order to be taken seriously. The one here magnifies the link on this when they say that it is a quote skill issue that we are unable to win the extinction outweighs debate. The one I see here piece of evidence concedes this adds impact when they say that actors with different levels of capacity across different levels of credibility in discursive spaces are given different weight. Certainly means that our impact sequence there is because the ability to have that discussion in class in the first place is overdetermined by ableist infrastructures. The fiat double bind beats the extinction outweighs debate because the impacts of the act become inevitable. Either fiat does not actually to stop them, or they fabricated constructions. You did not hear an answer to this, so you will not fill one. You will not fill one in for them. Their hermeneutical injustice says that also impact turns their fairness arguments because you should weaponize fairness to discourage participation in ableism in this context. They say that class turns the critique. This presumes that eugenics is a rational position that ought to be debated out in the first place. Our argument is that it is not worth platforming that kind of rhetoric and speech, because to do so, like, recapitulates to the Charlie Kirk debate me bro politics of it all, that it positions the disabled life as something that could perhaps be rationalized in the first place, which is the cost benefit dissad. It means that it beats the AF is a good imaginary because anything else gives us unreciprocal offense. They are going to go for this middle ground argument, and you will not grant it to them because they do not have a mechanism to adjudicate, to weigh out competing impacts across scales, i.e. the scale of this debate and this rhetoric. It should come first because it's the only thing your ballot can control, which is the fiat of one fiat self-funded vote.
How much?
320. Yeah,
I'll be the shorter.
yeah, that's fine. case. Framework. Everything else. So I guess the inverse of the K and the. Okay, so we're not ready. Okay.
Iowa has lots of debate. Only we saw the approximate impact of fascism brought about by Trump. There's no impact defense, and you're absolutely certain that aggressive foreign policy, weakened cooperation to capture governance is inevitable in the status quo and will coalesce towards extinction. Also turns decay because Trump's attack on the civil service gives him authority to bring about his ableist agenda in the government, including eliminating healthcare provisions, forcing people to not work from home, and deregulating capitalism. Iowa's negative strategy. This debate has been rereading some card in the 1AC in the most ableist way possible, called it ableist, and then the bloc spent 26 on the alternative and did not inaugurate a reason or a way that they solve our offense or their link arguments better. When in cases relevant in impact terms, their framework, you are absolutely certain that their impacts will cause real material violence, especially for disabled people. Rejecting the state causes this, and meaning you should affirm instrumentality and professionalism in this instance of Trumpian governance to make the government not fascist and keep healthcare for disabled people. Now, the frame of this debate is pragmatism. Structural link arguments about the structure of professionalism and disabilities in relationship to each other are not solved by the negative. The issue is that they have not read an alternative or a reason why rejection resolves the reasons why professionalism has a relationship with ableism in the first place, which means that the rejection does not solve their link arguments, but you're absolutely sure that there's a chance that the affirmative can solve our link arguments, which means that, especially since we're having link turns case arguments, offense, defense is really apt in this debate. Now, the only argument I'm answering here is circumvention. Iowa cannot say we don't access pragmatism by extending this thing, and then they drop every 1-year response. And once the evidence is inherently for us, we agree the court is embracing the UAT, and there was a fourth card, the 1EC, but only Emory has card about the effects of the plan, i.e. the 1C card just says that the courts don't like the plan. Yeah, no shit, the F is inherent, but that doesn't explain how the plan will work vis-a-vis fiat. First, normal means courts would have to legally strike down the UAT because it's the reason that Heritage Foundation legally justified Trump's executive order, and is the reason that his administration has been bolstering and has been able to illegally terminate federal employees in the United States. Only we have evidence that describes that process, which is 1C Perez. Second, effectually, even if you don't think the courts would unilaterally be anti-Trump, that's obviously not what we have to solve for. Only we have read evidence about the other effects of the plan, that the unions do stuff like their bulwarks against consolidation, they lobby to Congress, they challenge Trump in court, and challenge the dominant perception of an unchecked autocrat. Look, even if there's a risk of this, there is absolutely certain that extinction is happening in status quo. It is bad. It turns their offense, which means that you should try to resolve it even if we don't win 100%. The risk of solvency. Now, the framework, we do not have to, the role of the judge is to vote for the team that has their offense outweighs per our framework interpretation. Their role of the judge is self-serving and bad for clash, but only we can win under their role of the judge because the case turns a K. Framework, we do not, quote, make Iowa give us skills. The first order justification for clash the winners, that's necessary to break down biases that perpetuate ableism, which proves it undergrids Iowa's impacts. Clash contest and eugenicist logic is good because there is no principal argument underlying eugenics. The second is met with any rigorous contestation. The basis for it falls apart, which disproves the confrontation of our model to Charlie Kirk trying to dunk on random unprepared college kids. The people the most dogmatic about ableism are the ableist ones, which means that our model of clash resolves our offense. It's exceedingly possible to win an alternative metric to, quote, extinction outweighs and link turns case. It's incredibly paternalized into a certain disabled debate or somehow lack the ability to do that, but there's no link to the rest of Iowa's offense because the choices inter was, quote, weigh the case against links. It presides zero cap on how evidence ought to engage with the 1AC. It doesn't push disability scholarship to the back burner. It literally says that we should get able to weigh the case in response to their rejections. That is key because the planning impacts it solves are crucial justifications for the 1AC's epistemological arguments, allowing the neg to point out a flaw, collapses nuanced testing, and evacuates debates of any ability to compare competing strategies of remedying violence. And the 1AC should be held accountable for the scholarship. We agree, but the neg should be able to be win that the reason our scholarship is worse than the reason for why we forwarded it. Independently, 1AC Mason beats their fiat double-bind arguments. We agree that the plan obviously doesn't occur, but it's useful for us to debate and think about why governance matters and how they can help with disabled people, for example. If we never talk about restoring bargaining rights, it will never happen, and it allows Trump to do unstable stuff in the government, and we don't have to win that. The plan literally happens as a result of our offense, or as a result of voting affirmative, but just the debates that inaugurates are better than debates under their interpretation. Now, the permutation is try or die for it. The net benefit is governance. Remember how I was not explained any alternative conception how the government should work for disabled people or what work federal workers should do. How do they get healthcare, electricity, etc., which proves that some substantiation of governments are as good for disabled people, and you don't allowed to disprove it, disavow of it, even if they have read some or generic qualms about professionalization and how it appears in other instances. Trump can just have unblocked control of the government if we refuse it, if we do not do any professionalization, because the alternative to the plan is Trumpian autocrats doing professionalization, which is net worse. Examples like autism speak, doctors being bad, etc., is turned by Trump very explicitly. What was the first thing Trump did when he fired federal workers? He made R.K. the director of the CDC. This conception of anti-conceptual professionalism is exactly what R2C foster evidence as described that's necessary for the wider project of Trumpism that causes real material violence for disabled people, but are the effects of the plan enable institutional capacity to respond to it, because professionals who care about disabled people are better than Trumpists who think autism is caused by vaccines. Second, there's absolutely zero link to any of this professionalization stuff in the 2NR. At 0 points to the 1AC or any of our cards, even for that matter, say that professionalization is the only thing that matters. We have said that people like to work for the government and they care about it, which is the reason they're not working for the private sector and they are working for the public sector. And they have zero explanation for reasons why people care about their jobs, and they wanted to do it without Trump going behind their back and saying, I don't like what you're doing. Only we have evidence that the work that these public union members do is good and beneficial, which means that only we have offense that resolves it, and which means that you can affirm the general long-term praxis of what I was forwarding here, and also vote affirmative because you think our thing is approximate reduction in harm, that their alternative does not substantial, their alternative does not resolve. The medicalization link, at no point do we say medicalization is the only thing that matters. The rehousing of the Mason evidence is wrong. It's a swing and a miss. It's not what the Mason evidence says. The Mason evidence says that people want to do work. It doesn't say that the people that choose to work for the federal government have done so for various reasons, and they shouldn't have Trump be the person that dictates how their work looks like. Which means we're not forcing anyone to do anything. We're not saying professionalization is the only thing that matters. In this proximate instance, it's a good one.
It's a bit, Emory.
Sorry.